This is Viterbi Voices.
Coming to you from the University of Southern California, Viterbi School of Engineering.
We're here to give you the inside scoop on research, classes, student life, and so much more.
All of these shared by students, faculty, alumni, and other members of the USC community.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Viterbi Voices. As usual, I am one of your co-hosts. My name is Paul Ledesma. I'm the Executive Director of Undergraduate Admission here at the USC Viterbi School of Engineering.
And hello, everybody. I'm your other co-host, Maya Neuenschwander. I am currently a junior studying Industrial and Systems Engineering at the Viterbi School of Engineering.
Maya, I think we made it through the heat wave.
Yeah, we definitely did. I'm wearing a jacket this morning.
I was going to say, you're wearing a jacket.
Exciting.
You're wearing a jacket.
Yeah, it's comforting. It's nice to see it feeling at least a little bit more like fall, especially with all the pumpkin stuff coming out.
Oh, yeah, like pumpkin spice. Oh, are you a pumpkin spice person?
I am a diehard pumpkin spice, apple cider, fall. I have like an apple candle going right now. I love fall.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Do you think that's what do you think makes someone a pumpkin spice person and someone not a pumpkin spice person? Because I'm interested in the divide.
And that's really interesting because I'm not normally a sweet coffee person. Like I will drink my coffee black. I don't really like stuff in it, but for some reason
But you will drink a pumpkin spice latte?
Oh my gosh. I do pumpkin cold foam. That's like the best of everything. So pumpkin cold foam on top of like an iced Americano. It's my order if anybody was curious.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what makes people a pumpkin person though. I guess for me personally, I just really love fall, and coming from the Midwest, fall was always like really exciting. The trees were turning. It was like this excitement of you're starting school back up. It's starting to get like crisp. Yeah. I really liked that. So it always brings me back to that, even in LA with the palm trees and the warm weather. Like I like to have that little slice of fall.
So what was funny is that's what I was going to assume is that like this is like a nostalgia tip back to the Midwest of fall. But then I realized there's a lot of people I know that aren't from the Midwest that are super pumpkin spice people, and I'm very much like I just want coffee. I just want like regular coffee. I don't understand. Okay, I'm drinking coffee for the sake of coffee.
What are your thoughts on apple cider?
I don't drink it.
Oh, Paul, that's sad.
I think that's a total Midwest East Coast thing. I think that's a cold weather thing.
It definitely is, and like nothing beats just like going to an apple orchard. You're picking apples. You have like the unpasteurized apple cider.
I'm not against it. I'm definitely not against it. I'm just like, and you know this, like Halloween here, it's usually hot. Like this is one of the hard times in Halloween. It's probably why I'm not that big of a Halloween person, is that getting dressed up in extra clothes when it's hot doesn't make any sense to me.
Yeah, that makes sense. And when I was a kid, I always wished it was somewhere warm for Halloween because I would be a princess, but I would be a princess with snow pants and a winter jacket over my dress. So it didn't quite have that same charm that I imagined.
We're switching quickly into a Halloween conversation, but do you know are you dressing up for Halloween? Is Halloween a thing for you?
Oh, Halloween is definitely a thing. Actually, it's my birthday the week before Halloween. So Halloween is my birthday normally coincides with like, Halloween celebrations, or like I'll celebrate especially on Halloween. So I'm not quite sure what I'm going as this year. Last year I actually went as Perry the Platypus from Phineas and Ferb. That was a good costume.
Yep.
So
that's like a fedora. Is there like a fedora on?
Oh yeah, I had a fedora. I had like a teal dress. I wore a little like patent orange leather thing, and I said that was my tail. So it was good.
I think if we have anybody that listened to the podcast last year, we had this ongoing like tease of what my family's Halloween costume would be, because it was going to be a Halloween theme, or so a family themed element. And if anybody's wondering, no one is, I know, but I'm going to share anyway. This year is very disruptive. There is no cohesion of what anybody wants to be for Halloween. It's rather heartbreaking. And I have a feeling this will be the first Halloween that we don't actually have a family costume, because I think my daughter is on her own page, and I love that. And I'm also a little disappointed because I've never really been a Halloween person until it was like family costume time period. And so now it's like, well, now what do I do? So anyway, that's where we are. So what are we talking about? Oh my gosh. Okay. Admissions. So this episode, this episode, what are we calling it? Do we have a title for it? Are we doing What do you want to call it?
It'll be like engineering or let's see. The title is still in the works, obviously.
Yeah.
But something about myth busting college admissions.
Yeah, myths and legends. Uh,
Specifically in that tone of voice.
myths and legends of undergraduate engineering admission. Yeah, it's like I can imagine like we just have like album cover of like wizards and ogres and stuff. That's what we're talking about, which is like what are the things you've heard? What are the things that are scary? What are the things that you're not too sure of? What are the rumors and scary ghost stories that you've heard about with admission? That are seemingly scary because it's about your life? And so we got together. You pulled together a panel of some of our students, and they talked about all the things that they were wondering when they went through the college admission process. We talked a lot about perspective of what it was like during that time period versus now. We went on lots of tangents. So I'll just, as a heads up, this goes in a lot of different directions, but it was entertaining. I think it's probably due to the fact that we were recording this at night. And so I know I was a little loopy. It was the end of my day. Like I remember when we finished, my daughter was already asleep and off to bed. So like it was not a thing that we normally do. But what I do want to tell you this is that the next day, Natalie and Taylor were with me in a session, and half of these questions came up almost exactly as they were put into the actual conversation, about like the one question about the essay and, oh my God, what do I do here? What do I do there? And it was really, really interesting because like Natalie Taylor, like, we just talked about this last night. We just had this conversation. So we were definitely on point. All the students had great questions. You all should take a listen to this and hopefully recognize that a lot of stuff you've heard and worried about, you might be a little off base on. And we try to give some opportunities here for you to get some perspective, zoom out a little bit, and also some helpful tips on how you should navigate this process. And it's probably not the same as what you might have been told up to this point. And so let's have a listen, and then we'll also see you on the back end of this for a couple quick notes.
Hello, everybody. Hello, friends. I hope you guys are all doing well today. For those of you who are just listening to this podcast right now, I am one of your co-hosts, Maya Neuenschwander. I'm studying ISE. I'm a junior this year at Viterbi, and I have a very special episode for you guys today. I have a bunch of my good friends, a bunch of my coworkers on this, and my other co-host with me, Paul.
Hello.
So as to jump into this, I'm going to have everybody who's here introduce themselves. So let's start with you, Natalie.
Hey all, my name's Natalie, as you just heard. I'm a senior studying civil engineering building science, and I'm from San Diego, California.
Hey everyone, my name is Jevon. I am a junior here at Viterbi, and I'm studying computer science and business administration, originally from Mount Laurel, New Jersey.
What's up, everyone? I'm Nick. I'm a junior studying astronautical engineering, and I'm from Bakersfield, California.
Hi, everyone. I'm Taylor. I'm a sophomore studying computer science, and I'm from Gainesville, Florida.
Awesome. And last but not least, Paul, would you like to give a little introduction?
Yeah, I'm Paul, and I hang out at the school sometimes, and I do admission stuff sometimes too. I want to get something out of the way. Sorry, this is something that's really distracting me, and this has nothing to do with the podcast, but I'm going to say it anyway. Maya is sharing a screen with us because we're all looking at some of the same stuff, and you have 26 tabs open on your browser right now. Is that? This is more of a poll to the rest of you guys. Is that above average? Is that average? What is going on in your world of tabs?
No, this hurts me too. The problem is that not just the quantity, but the lack of organization. Of like you can have this many, but in a different window for a specific task.
I think it's honestly disorganizingly organized. You know, she has a lot of thoughts going on, and she just wants to see them all laid out visually so that she can handle them as she needs to.
Thank you, Taylor.
Do you know what every one of those tabs are, or does it take you 4 clicks to find the thing you're looking for?
I do know what all the tabs are because they're all from the last like 3 hours. Unfortunately.
That's 3 hours.
And I hate to say it as well, but I also have a monitor with 6 other tabs open. So add that to the going tally.
Well, I think you would kill me if you saw my computer. I have about 5 Chrome windows open for different things with about 15 tabs each. So good thing I'm not sharing screen.
My God. Yeah. I just don't operate that way. I don't.
My computer
Hey,
is a dinosaur, so I can't even operate that way because it can carry 2 tabs before it starts wheezing like an airplane.
well, even the
Wow.
best processor is going to have problems with a browser holding that much information open at any one time, because this isn't like your default. This is what opens up every day. This is just you've been doing stuff and you keep leaving things open.
Yeah, pretty much.
This is the hard hitting podcast content that we're trying to get at here, obviously.
Yeah, seriously. For any prospective student that's listening, do as Paul says, not as I do.
Sorry. Back to the subject matter at hand. Why are we here, Maya? What are we doing?
Yeah, so it is deep into college application season. So for prospective students, we're having a lot of content that we're posting as current students who are trying to inform you on what's going on at Viterbi. And yeah, the common application essays, those are going to be due in like a month? Or do you have a countdown going, Paul?
Yeah, it is. It's 6 weeks.
6 weeks. Yeah. So we're anticipating that a lot of people are writing their essays right now. So we thought that it would be fun to have a bunch of us students on to ask Paul some questions and have a sort of Mythbusters here. So ask him questions about rumors we heard, things that we were considering, just answering a lot of questions that might help answer questions that you have.
Yeah. All of these students, they've all been through everything you've been through, and they went through the same scenario. And so much of that scenario is stuff that they heard. Hey, I heard this, I heard that. Is that true? Whatever. And so I thought it'd be really fun to go through this process with you all and start kicking it off on things that you remember from the college admission process, things you were scared about, things that you wondered about how they ran. And let's dive right in. So I'm here. Let's do this.
All right.
Okay. I was going to say, I have an anecdote I wanted to start with because
Do it.
It's my biggest regret of high school is for some reason, I had this idea in my head that no college would want me if I didn't do a sport. And if you know anything about me, I'm the most anti-athletic person. I will not hike. I will not run. Like, I don't think I would run a 12-minute mile. Like, I hate sports. But I subjected myself to an entire season of pole vaulting.
Because you're the person that joined track senior year?
No, I did this freshman year, and then I was like, it haunted me because I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I physically cannot be in pole vault anymore, so I'm not getting into college.
I have other questions. There are so many sports. How did you choose pole vaulting?
Natalie, you're such a tiny person. How could you even go that high off?
Well, that probably makes it easier, to be honest with you.
I cleared 7 feet, I will say.
Wow.
That's like 3 or 4 Natalies.
Hold on now. Hold on. All right. Yeah, I don't really know why I chose pole vault, but I think it's because it had the least amount of running.
Interesting.
Like, you just run for 20 feet and then you're done running. I think that was what really pulled me to this sport.
It's fun. The anecdote is a really great way to kick it off. So I do appreciate that, Natalie, because there are so many people that have some sort of there's some sort of belief that was built into their head. It was somehow fractured rumors that turned into you better do X, otherwise Y is not going to happen. And it is really interesting to me how many people I see do something starting senior year. And it's like, oh, I better do this. And first of all, let's bust the myth right away. You don't have to play sports to get into college. I'll take it further. You don't have to do anything, in particular, to get into college. It's not like you're going through a laundry list. And oftentimes, it's funny. I was having a meeting with college counselors this morning. These are counselors that work in high schools or that work with high school students. And we had a really long discussion about the same exact topic because they were under the assumption that you had to do STEM related activities to get into the engineering school and that they better do a lot of them in order to get into the engineering school. And I said, first of all, no. Second, what makes that person better than someone who's been highly involved in band for the 4 years or someone who's really engaged in student government? Our process is about bringing in different types of human beings into this world to build out your community. And I know that the 5 of you all had very different high school backgrounds. You all did very different things. And that's exactly the way that it should be. You all shouldn't be captains of the robotics team. That would make for a really weird incoming class. You should not all be student body president. That would be really weird, right?
We can't all be pole vaulters.
You can't all be pole vaulters. There's only so many Natalies in the world to go around. Exactly. And so I think that's the best thing to kind of put that anecdote and that myth into advice here, which is that every single student, including you all and including everyone that's listening to this, has their own unique path, and they have their own unique journey that got them to where they are, and they are doing things. Now, I will stress, doing things is way more important than not doing things. I just don't care necessarily what those things are. And some activities don't have more value than others. But I do want to see students that are showing me that they have made contributions to their community, because our job is really to understand who they are and project forward what we believe their potential contributions to our student body will be here. And not one thing has more value than something else. And I hope that that's incredibly clear. And that often will surface, like I said before, with STEM activities. It'll also surface with this idea of like volunteerism and service. And sometimes students will take their application and artificially shape it to be that they're so super involved in community service, when I know that they really weren't. Like, you can read it in the application. I want to know what you did. So don't think that we're looking for anything in particular. I think that's number one lesson here, which is we're not looking for any one thing in particular. We are looking to understand who you are and better understand your story and figure out what we might be able to get from you in our student body. And there's a lot of things that make this world go round. I can't wait to tell that story about pole vaulting. That's gonna be my new favorite example.
Please no.
No, I like how
You
you
could have
frame
chose
that.
like water polo.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't swim.
That's the last thing. I played water polo in high school. That's the last thing you want to do just for fun. Like, you will drown. Like, that is not a thing you just
built for that, Paul. You got to be a different kind of person.
What's that?
I said Natalie's not built for it. You just have to be someone like you.
Well, I don't know if it's someone like me, because honestly, it's much more about like the athleticism. Like, I drowned multiple times in water polo. I'm not saying like I'm amazing at it. My point is that like that is a sport that will kill the highest athlete as much as possible.
Dang, yeah. Well, we didn't even have pole vaulting or water polo at my high school. We did have trap shooting, but like
I don't really know what trap shooting is. What?
I am totally going to butcher this. So if anybody's listening to this and you know what trap shooting is, I'm so sorry, but they're like clay pigeons.
Yeah.
And like they throw them up and it's like, how many things can you shoot? How many of the clay pigeons?
I've seen that on a show or two.
Yeah, you know that thing like pull, and they just like they throw the clay pigeons out. And you try to hit them as many times.
Is this the Midwest?
Activities.
This is what the Midwest is.
See, I believe 100% that if Natalie lived in Wisconsin in high school, she would be on the trap shooting team.
Whoa, that's
Varsity
some high
sport.
expectations.
Varsity
Jimmy.
sport. Very cool. But looping back to what you said, Paul, I like how you emphasized how it can be anything. It doesn't need to be pole vaulting. It doesn't need to even be like, I mean, maybe it doesn't even need to be specific to engineering, but
it's not. Yeah.
Yeah. That ties into one question that I know I had at like applying to Viterbi. So Viterbi, obviously, specifically, that's an engineering school. So they're asking like, okay, like you should show you're interested in science, in math, but like how can
I'll stop you right there. That's the thing. Your assumption is you have to show your interest in science and math. I mean, obviously, I paused you there because you're doing that by applying to it, right? I think that's the main point. You applied to it. I get that you're interested in it, and there are certain questions on the application, like one, and I'm paraphrasing here, but why do you want to study what you want to study? Well, yeah, that should tell us, why are you interested in this particular field? But what a lot of people will kind of like transform that thought process into is, I need to make sure that I'm explaining how math and science rules my life, and that every single question on this application must be surrounding the concepts of math and science. And that's why I want to study engineering at USC. So I always pause people there, because I often get questions like, how am I supposed to bring in engineering into this question that has nothing to do with it? I said, no one said you're supposed to, right? Just answer the question. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but there's actually an assumption built into your preface to your question that I wanted to be sure that we break down.
Yeah, that pretty much related to my question. So my question originally was like, how do you show that you're interested in engineering? So apart from applying, but like, let's say you're answering the why do I want to study this major? Like, how do you show that you're interested in engineering without having had any past experience in an engineering class?
Absolutely. Well, I think so. Part of what I answered is related to that. You're right. And the other thing is, the kind of the impetus of that concern assumes that other people have so much more engineering experience than you, and that just isn't true. I will often get a number of questions about, I'm applying to biomedical engineering, but I'm really worried because I don't have any biomedical engineering experience. And I will look at them and say, what high school student has biomedical engineering experience? The concept related to engineering are things that you will first expose yourself to or be exposed to and also immerse yourself in college. And so it's not this idea of looking at someone like a job applicant where we're like, well, we didn't see a lot of chemical engineering experience in this high school student. That's kind of one of the most ridiculous statements ever. And so I think what we want to do here is understand, what you want to do, or you have an idea why you want to do it. I want to know what that is. You tell me by putting it on your application, you're choosing your first choice major as specifically the discipline you want to go into. The rest of the application, there's one, maybe two questions that are related to the academic discipline, but the rest of the application is much more about, I trust you and believe you. You put down that you want to study X. I'm assuming that's what you want to do. The rest of the application is getting to know you, and that has nothing to do with what your intended course of study is going to be. When a question is asking you what was the most important thing that you got involved in high school and why, you shouldn't sit there and rack your brain to figure out how am I going to work in chemical engineering into this answer. That's ridiculous. If you were a 4-year varsity basketball player and you played on multiple travel teams and that was your passion and you had 2-a-day workouts, you got up at 5 and you went to the gym and you got these after school practices and you traveled on weekends, you did all this stuff, I'm going to kind of assume that the most important thing to you in high school is basketball. And if you don't answer that, I have worries about why you didn't, because then why did you spend all that time doing that? But then you tell me that it's this one seminar you went to on chemical engineering one weekend. That's weird. Like that just doesn't sit right. Now, maybe that is true and tell me if it is, but like, honestly, I have a feeling that most of these concerns stem from this idea of there are formulas to get admitted. As long as I trigger these words, as if we're some sort of artificial intelligence process that's seeking number counts of words and frequency of statements and sentiments to particular answers that line up with disciplines. I will tell you, one of our faculty members actually suggested that to me, and I told him, no, it's a bad idea. That doesn't work because we're human beings reading more about human beings. So put down your interest. There's a question that's related to it. Tell us that interest. And there are good ways to say you don't know why you're interested in it. You can just tell me how you arrived at that interest and recognize there's no right answers here. Authenticity, which I'm sure I will say a number of times throughout this particular conversation, is the key to this. I want to know who you are and I want to have an authentic introduction to you.
I think per that topic, like about authenticity and about learning more about you, I think one of the most infamous parts about the USC application is those like special personality questions at the beginning.
Infamous.
Yeah.
The quick take.
As I was applying, like I think I was a little afraid to be completely honest on those questions. So I'm wondering, like, especially through Viterbi, should there be certain things you say or how to navigate that part?
Oh my gosh, so, Jevon, I remember obsessing over a whole week of like, what's my favorite movie? I gotta know what foods I'm gonna be, the top 3 ones.
Yeah. No, I felt that. And then in my interview, they actually mentioned some of the things I wrote on there. And I was so caught off guard. So I was like, oh no, I didn't prepare like a whole essay about why this was my favorite thing.
So I was about to ask you all, like, did you all obsess about these quick takes? Because we do get so many questions about these quick takes. Oh my God. And they don't mean anything, guys. Like, I shouldn't say they don't mean anything, but it's an attempt to try to help you all give us a little more color and personality inside of your application. And if you take a second, take a beat and breathe, you have answers to every one of these questions off the top of your head. The only thing that stresses you out and creates them into these infamous things where you stress and Nick, I spent a week trying to figure out my favorite movie. I have a pretty good idea. You know what your favorite movie is, buddy. Like it's just, or at least there's one or two that you could probably come to the terms, but you were worried about what our thoughts were on your favorite movie. You weren't worried about what you're going to put down. You were worried about what it was going to do to your application. And it wasn't going to do anything other than for us, and everybody kind of reads these quick takes a little bit differently. But for us, and for me in particular, it's much more of almost like a break in the application of like, let's get to know this guy a little bit different on a little bit of a different plane. And that's kind of fun for me. And more often than not, this is where authenticity, or more importantly, lack of authenticity, tends to come through. When students are sitting here trying to come up with some sort of way to work chemical engineering into their favorite snack, I call BS. Like, come on, like, Dippin' Dots, because of the molecular chemistry of the liquid nitrogen that goes into it, always fascinates me since I was a kid. Hence my interest. I'm like, first of all, you're not supposed to write a freaking paragraph on this. You just say Dippin' Dots, and I'll be with you on it. I get it. They're weird. It's ice cream. I don't know what it is. It's cool, but just tell me. You don't need to, like, if that's legit, like your favorite snack. I remember talking to a young woman, I think it was 2 years ago now, and I was doing an individual counseling session with her, and she goes, I have so many questions for you. I'm like, cool. How can I help you? She goes, okay, quick takes. When you say favorite snack, what do you mean? I'm like, oh my God. Okay. So real quick. And I looked at her, I said, real quick, don't think about the application. Just look at me. And we're on a Zoom call. I said, what's your favorite snack? And she goes, raspberries. I said, great. Write it down. And she goes, what do you mean? I said, you just told me raspberries are your favorite snack. Write them down. So I don't need to explain it. I'm like, why would you need to explain to me that raspberries are your favorite snack? They're delicious. I get it. I like raspberries too.
Mm-hmm. But and then I feel obligated to defend raspberries.
Someone said their favorite snack was water. I think that's a funny one.
Well, I mean, if whatever, man, like, I don't know, you tell me you, right? Like, just tell me you. And this Natalie, you might be getting into something else, which is oftentimes we get these like assumptions that you have to, quote, stand out in the application process. And so you get some weird answers to these things. And I don't know if that's where you're going with this, Natalie, but you get some weird answers. And I'm like, the attempt to stand out usually will work, but that's not a positive thing. Standing out and being remembered in the application process, like every person that I can remember in my application process of doing this for over 20 years, I don't remember for a positive reason. I remember because it was weird. It was weird, and I got really weirded out by it, and I kind of just like moved on as quickly as I could. Or I was like, did anybody see this? This is weird, right? This is really weird. Like this, it's more like sideshow stuff. It's not necessarily something that you're like, wow, this is something I want to do. Authenticity. Tell me what's going on. Now, if you have something that you are authentically interested in or you like that is weird and you feel like you must defend it, I don't think raspberries falls into that category. But if you eat something that's like so whatever weird to everyone else, yeah, maybe tell us a little bit why. That's fine. I don't really care. There's a certain word limit on those, but it's essentially made to be one or a couple words answer. You don't have to say why. I don't care. You like certain type of music, cool. The next show you're going to binge watch, I think is one of them. Whatever sounds great to me. This is much more about personality, and that none of those questions admit or deny students, if that makes any sense.
So we talked a lot about expectations in regards to, the fun questions on the applications and extracurricular involvements, but what about more on the academic side? Is there a minimum GPA, a minimum SAT score? Like, at least personally, I remember looking up the median SAT of the admitted students for the schools I was interested in while applying. And if my SAT wasn't in that range, I often felt like, oh, they're not going to accept me. So can we talk about that a little bit and how that's viewed in admissions?
So I'll turn it around on you a little bit, Taylor. Where did you get the information where you were seeing medians of SATs? Google. 90% of the stuff you find on Google is not accurate. So, I mean, I'll just say that right off the bat. Like, I have seen multiple things about admit ratios and average SATs. I've seen things about the number of students in our incoming class that are way off. And it's just because a lot of what Google's doing right now too is aggregating data from different sources and providing it as a snapshot when you Google USC Viterbi School of Engineering. And it'll put that to the side of the results. And you can it's almost like they're trying to do a service, but what they're really doing is they're aggregating bad data. And the bad data is not actually sharing anything correct. And there's a number of different sources out there that are not USC. And if there's any questions about any of these things, I'm always happy to help answer them. But the first thing we should talk about here is that you all applied. Well, first of all, we're test optional. And so SAT, ACT scores don't really mean a thing because we admitted students with them and without them. And averages are way off kilter because when we made them optional, well, guess who submitted SAT scores? People with really good SAT scores. So the average shot up. But we also admitted people without SAT scores. So it's not really that big of a deal. So let's remove the ideas of tests. For fall 2023, we're continuing to be test optional. Don't worry about test scores. I don't worry about test scores. They really tell me a lot. When it comes to the GPA, which is the other part of your question, which is a great question, numbers don't mean a thing. And I will regularly tell students and anyone I'm talking to that their GPA doesn't mean anything to me because I don't understand the rigor and I don't understand the context. And more specifically, these days in particular, everybody's GPA is inflated. All of you had like additional points that got thrown on top of your GPA. And it's not uncommon for me to someone to email me and say, I have a 4.6 GPA. And I'm like, no, you don't. No one has a 4.6 GPA. And so because all these additional points that come on top of it. And then the other thing that's really interesting to understand is that depending on where you're applying from, this is something we were alluding to before we started recording, people in different states and different schools and different counties have different types of GPA structures. Not everybody's on a 4.0 scale. There are some schools in Texas on a 6.0 scale. And they've been introduced to me like, I have a 5.6 GPA. I'm like, wow, that's impressive. How do you get that? There's also some schools, I know one in particular in the Northeast, that doesn't give GPAs because they don't believe in specific grades. They give qualitative evaluations. That's a fun thing to look at. So GPAs, first of all, never mean the same thing. No one's playing on the same scale. And everyone has this varying levels of extra points. And so what I really want to get into is what classes are you taking and what grades are you getting, which is not GPA. And at your particular school, whoever's listening, what you need to really understand is that there are hard classes and easy classes at your school. Are you engaged in the most rigorous classes at your high school? And are you getting A's and B's, more A's than B's? If that is true, then you are doing what you need to do to be prepared. But there's no such thing as a good GPA, and there's no such thing as a bad GPA. And an average GPA doesn't tell you much depending on how you want to look at it. But I will know that the majority of our students coming through here are doing exactly that. And as far as the coursework that we want to see, because that's another part about this as well, when you're looking at engineering applicants, we want to be able to see that students are prepared for the engineering curriculum. So specifically with math and science, the most rigorous courses available to them. And with mathematics, we do need to see calculus. We need to see success in calculus. So you can be getting A's and B's across the board, but you get a C in calculus, that will give us pause. That will really challenge us because calculus is a strong correlation to success in engineering. I should say lack of success in calculus is a correlation to lack of success in engineering. And so you can have the best GPA in the world, but you can tank calculus, and that will really give us a challenge on understanding your preparation for the engineering curriculum, and will pause us on the application process. If a student doesn't have calculus, it's not definitely a done deal, but we would need to know more context. Again, it's a human process where we're trying to understand everything about the student. Maybe if calculus isn't offered at the school, we need to know that. Now, granted, we likely would know that from the school report and the counselor, but we want to know a little bit more background. And if there's some sort of reason that we don't understand as to why you are not in calculus other than you're just behind, then we need to understand that. And you should explain that. There's a great question on the application that says, is there anything else we should know about you? That's a perfect opportunity to explain anything that may look out of sync or what you believe to be out of sync from other competitive applicants in the school. And then the other thing of calculus is that in every single school, there's different levels of calculus. And you all had very different levels of calculus taught at your school. Some of you had like pre-calc, honors pre-calc. Some of you had AB. Some of you had BC. Some of you had multivariate. Some of you had IB, HL, AA. Some of you had all these different types of calculus.
The entire alphabet of calculus.
It sounds like Paul is just rapping right now.
As weird as all that sounds, those were accurate statements. And it's so weird to
I'm
me
the
that
IBAA.
Yeah. So this idea of understanding what calculus is, and there isn't, I think what's to be clear about this, there isn't necessarily more value with one of these over another. What I do want students to understand is that they should be in the rigorous path available to them, the most rigorous path available to them at their school, not worry about what's going on at another school or their cousin's school or their friend's school or what their parents said that they needed to have, even though they don't offer it. And so if they're engaged in the high levels of rigor, that's what we want to see. And we want to see success in that. That's what's most important to us. And GPAs are, at the end of the day, almost everyone that's coming in, when they take away all those, every single one of those additional points, almost everybody's got a 3.8. And that's not who we admit. That's just who we see coming through. I'm like, yeah, that's about right. That's the math on it. A's and B's, more A's than B's, taking the right classes. Yeah, 3.7, 3.8. That's about right.
Okay, Paul. So I'm going to preface this with, this is a little bit out there, but it was something that I was concerned about.
Yeah, do it. Raspberries.
So yeah, raspberries. Let me explain. Schools, and this is something like other schools too, I'm not sure about it, but
sure.
Like, do they track analytics, or not they, but USC track analytics about, like, I guess demonstrated interests, but more like, do I follow their Instagram?
Yeah.
Do I go to all their like events? Do I respond to their emails or whatever?
You know Paul's social security number.
Yeah. Do I need to study?
This just got weird, Natalie. I don't know what's going on here. Now this becomes a crime.
Yes, precisely.
That's not demonstrated interest. That's fraud. Come on, let's make this right. It's a super great question. The only thing that counts is how many Twitter followers I actually get. And so if they're following me on Twitter, that's the only way to increase their chances of admission at USC. No, that's
nice, Paul.
Right. Just leave it there, right? Just leave it there. That's the end of the question. No, Nick, this is a great question, because there are a number of universities that do track demonstrated interest in ways in which you outlined. I don't know exactly how they do it or what they do, or how that influences their application process. We do not do that. And so I want to make clear to everybody that when we invite you to an event, when we send you an email, we're not keeping track of these things for the sake of your application. We're not actually trying to understand how much you love us. I honestly don't care. I want to make sure that you're getting information that you need. And so we send a lot of emails. We hold a lot of events. We do this podcast. We put all these things out there for the pure purpose of, in case people need it. The reason, the impetus of this particular episode is these are concerns that you all really had. And I know students out there in the world have these concerns. So let's address them. Let's make sure that people understand how we operate. The university as a whole does not practice demonstrated interest. My personal take on this is, like, I don't like to play any games. I like to shoot straight, and I don't want anybody playing any games with me. And there's oftentimes I get a number of different bogus emails all the time about how much, they're so interested in USC is my number one choice. And, oh my God, I've loved everything that's happened. And I'm like, great. That's awesome. And if that's true, awesome. But also, is it true? Because if you have a feeling you sent the same email to everybody else thinking that they're practicing demonstrated interest as well, and it was a form email, and you just replaced University of Southern California with something else. And again, in a world where we value authenticity, I really don't value that. I don't value that game. And I know I don't count it against anybody, because I know that people are worried about this process and they're scared. So I don't think it's really a problem necessarily. But no, we're not tracking whether you follow our social media accounts. We're not tracking how many clicks on our video you actually gave. This is something where if you apply to our program, I consider that you have demonstrated interest in our program. The application is the demonstrated interest. That's all we need. It's a good question.
I'm really glad that USC doesn't do demonstrated interest, because even though I'm from California, like I'm literally 2 hours away from LA, I didn't know USC was a school until October of my senior year. And I don't know how I avoided it so much. But I was just like looking through like private universities in California, and like University of Southern California. I was like, I've never heard of this. I was like, maybe I should apply.
So were there other schools that you didn't know existed, or were we just some sort of really weird blind spot in your radar in high school?
Just you guys, and maybe like University of Virginia or something. Like, I don't know.
How close were you to the LA, to like USC geographically?
I am from San Diego, so I'm 2 hours away. But like, get this, I was actually born in Orange County, which is even closer to LA, and I did live in Pasadena. I don't know how I avoided USC up until my senior year of high school.
Even
But here
after
I am.
being recruited from our pole vaulting team, you didn't get any of that information?
No, not at all. It just went right over my head. But on the topic of being from California, I always felt like I had a little bit of a leg up with California-based schools because I'm from in-state. I don't know if you have something you want to mention about that.
Yeah, I think that comes from this really interesting and confusing version. Our name is confusing. The idea of University of Southern California, it sounds like a public institution, and we are a private institution that happens to be located in California. And there's a history behind that, but it's it's just challenging. And students go through this idea of like, well, I'm in state, so therefore I have all these state options. In the University of California, 9 campuses. The State University of California, the Cal States, have a number of different campuses as well. We have more universities in California than any other state. Like it's tremendous. There's so many different academic opportunities. So it's really easy for us to get confused into that. But as a private institution, no one has any leg up. Whether you're from California, close to USC, far from, we have students from all over the world apply to our programs. We admit students from all over the world, and we enroll students from all over the world. In fact, the majority of our students come from the majority of our incoming class for the Viterbi School of Engineering come from outside of California. Somewhere between 62-65% of each incoming class comes from outside of California. And to clarify, that's not manufactured. That's not a quota or something that we're trying to do. It's actually representative of the applicant pool. So Natalie, maybe, I don't know if that's true for the UC system. I know that they will, and as a UC program, as a public institution, they will publicize out the rates and the admit rates for in-state, out-of-state, exactly how that works. But as a private institution, we're bringing in students from everywhere. And we don't have that. What I refer to is we don't have an obligation to educate the state. The state institutions, because their budgets are controlled by the state, has an obligation to educate the state because it's being run by state tax dollars. We are not.
Makes sense. Makes sense. So West Coast, not Best Coast, or something like that.
West Coast, best coast to be on. West Coast, best coast to go to college in.
There you go. There you go, Ma.
Maybe that one. Yeah, I know that was definitely something I was thinking about coming to school. Nobody from my high school, I don't even think anybody had ever applied to USC.
Really?
I had surprisingly, Natalie, heard about it before Natalie. It's on like a family vacation to California. But yeah, I was so confused. I was like, well, nobody from my school has ever applied. Like, would they even take people from my school? So that's another question.
Like you believe that there had to be.
I thought there were quotas and there were like target schools that USC had.
No,
so like, let's say the school in the Bay that there were like 10 people. I was like, oh no, I'm never going to get in.
No. And I think that's really interesting. Because no matter who you are, you look at it incorrectly, right? This idea that, oh, I'm from this school, I have a better chance of admission. Oh, I'm from this school, I don't have a chance of admission. That's not true. Think about the minimum eligibility standards. Are you doing the work that we need to be able to see in order to understand whether you're prepared for our curriculum? That's number one. And point of fact, if there's more applicants from your school, you're competing with more people. So what we really need to understand is like we're trying to get students from all over, and there aren't quotas for schools. There aren't quotas from counties or particular areas of the particular country. We want to get people from everywhere. We're trying to represent the entire world in our student body. Sometimes we get, what's really interesting to me as well is that, let's say there's first of all, you don't have to have a legacy. Like your school doesn't have to have a legacy to get admitted to USC. I think it's number one. Number two, what I find fascinating is if I look long form at the data, if I look like at more of a longitudinal study of different schools, and we see schools with lots of applicants from different schools, you'll see applicant rates go up and down. And I think that's really reflective of you all talking to each other and you all assuming that like last year, not a lot of people got in. And so I'm not going to apply this year because in my view, this is who I saw got in. And so therefore I classify myself as not in that view and I will not get in. So I've self-selected myself out of that. And then you see a drop in admits. Well, lo and behold, this is the most simple understanding of this ever. This is not precise, but a higher percentage of students got admitted the next year because less students applied. And then all of a sudden people say like, oh, maybe that's the school I want to apply to. And then they'll come in and apply more the next year. And then they'll just kind of create that pattern over and over again. Or the reverse will happen. More students got in one particular year just out of sheer whatever happened because of that applicant pool. And there were great students there. And for some reason, people think like, oh, that school's not selective enough. And so I'm not applying next year. Like in their particular view, in their particular world, their particular school, in that particular year, they viewed one school or one university as too selective or not selective enough. And so what's interesting is that the applicant pools from year to year are influenced by the graduating class of the year before you. I've seen it happen. It's not anything we're doing. I just see you all freaking each other out and creating your own narratives about whether you have a better or worse chance of admission when the stats are exactly the same across the board.
We're playing ourselves.
Yeah, and it's natural because I think the thing that the impetus of this particular episode is this is scary. This is a really unnerving situation for a 17-year-old, 16, 17-year-old to go through. It's oftentimes the first thing that you all do that you all feel is the biggest life decision that you have. And to be honest with you, it is one of the largest life decisions you have up to that point. They only get bigger after that. And so you feel like as smart students, as people that have done well in school, that you have even more pressure on yourself because you have to succeed. You should be the one to figure this out. And so you put a lot of pressure on yourself, and that's natural. There's not a lot I can do to take that away other than let you know, like, yeah, like this is a process and we're one school and you should be applying to many more. Our chances of admission, roughly a little under 10%. That's what we were in the last couple of years. That's what we're going to be likely in the next year or two. Follow that through. If we're in that range, if you've met the minimum expectations, throw your application in. And make sure that you are considering other universities that are out there to balance that out and work with your college counselor on creating a nice array of colleges and universities that you like for different reasons, that you have good chances of admission across the board, and not that you're trying to collect admission. I think that's the other thing some students do is they like apply to schools that they know they want to get into because they want to like have that trophy case of admission records on hand. I think you all know these students that have done that, and that's not necessarily helpful to the process. We want to try to make it as real as possible and find the right students and bring as much of the stress down as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. With that sidebar, Natalie, I came up with a Halloween costume for you.
Oh, perfect. What is it?
The common application.
Super scary.
Just go as the common app. Spooky.
I thought you were going to say pole vaulter.
I thought it was the pole vaulting.
I think a pole vaulter is a much better idea.
I didn't even think about that. Natalie and I were talking about this earlier today over coffee, and I was like, I'll think of a creative one for you.
I think by the end of this entire conversation, we're going to learn so much about Natalie that we're going to wonder, why did we ever admit Natalie?
Okay, this sounds like a bullying Natalie podcast. I thought we were busting some myths here.
You're really setting us up for it, though. Like it's nothing. We have like no hand in this. It's just you keep lining them up.
I'm just very honest about who I am. What can I say? I'm authentically me, like you
there
wanted.
You go. And see, there you go. And that's how you prove us right. Prove us wrong. That's why. Yeah. Authenticity.
Yeah, I love it.
Speaking of like when you were talking about how applying to college is such a life-changing decision, one of the things that kept me on edge was picking my major. I was like scared that the major that I picked, I would either never be able to change, or even throughout admissions in Viterbi, would you say that there are some majors that are easier than others to help get into the school?
Let's pause for a second, Taylor, and tell people the rest of your story. Like, because like you're burying the headline here, which is what you were thinking about, what you applied to, what you're accepted to, and what you're doing now. And you're going to kind of answer a lot of these questions for everybody.
Okay, guys, now I'm the one getting exposed. So when I applied, I was very passionate about biomedical engineering. That was my end all. I thought I was going to be doing biomedical for the rest of my life. And then over the past 2 semesters, since I just finished my freshman year, I discovered that in theory, what I thought biomedical was sounded very nice, but in practice, it was not something I enjoyed. I was not a fan, and I was just trying to find other passions. And so I recently changed my major to computer science. And now I'm really happy. I've been loving computer science so far. So I guess by answering my own question, it is possible to change. And it's not a one-size-fits-all type of situation.
Yeah. No, and I wanted you to tell your story because it puts a finer point on what I was about to say, which is that this is some students know exactly what they want to do. And I say, go for it. Put it down the application. You'll be fine. But a good number of students go through this process with anxiety added on top of all this other anxiety we're talking about related to engineering disciplines. And a lot of that has to do with something that we talked about a moment before, which is a lack of experience and exposure. And the other element that gets added into that is prospective engineering students really don't like being wrong about things. You know, you all really like getting right answers, right? Mm-hmm. Your math and science, your skill sets, you really get frustrated if you get anything wrong. And so when you look toward a profession that is built on analytical problem solving and right and wrong answers, and you can't figure out what the right answer is, this becomes this very meta, soul-crushing endeavor of, I should know this. Why don't I know this? Why don't I know whether I want to be a biomedical engineer or a chemical engineer or a civil engineer or a computer science student? And in essence, it's your skill set that is beginning to fail you, because this is not a quantitative decision-making process. It doesn't involve analytics or data. It involves a gut feeling that most of you would demand more data on to determine which of these is the right answer, which is often where we get a lot of questions. Like, they dive into so much stuff to tell me what's the right answer to, I want a career in X, what's the best degree for that? And there's never an answer for that, because 10 or 15 different degree programs will lead to that level of career. And so it's all about choosing your gut, going with your gut based on the information you have available to you, knowing that you'll get more information in college. So keep yourself open in the future. And Taylor, your example really shows that out, which is, hey, I think I like biomedical engineering. Cool. Put it down. We'll admit you directly to that program. We'll have you take your first course in biomedical engineering when you get here. And the goal of that first course is to answer two questions. What the heck is it? And do I like it? And as you went through your first year, Taylor, you said it just wasn't what I thought it might be. And over that time period, you're also either passively or, through students, through other types of experiences, or actively through programs that we put on about the different programs, you start to pick up other things. You're like, you know what, but I'm getting this whiff of something over here that I think is even cooler, that maybe I didn't have a nice, clear throughput on coming in from high school, because now I'm in a different level of the curriculum. I'm in a community that does different things and talks about things in different ways. And I start to realize, I think that's what I want to do. And so the ability to change your mind is built into our curriculum. It's what we would call a flexible curriculum, where you start in a program and you're not committed to it. And the idea that if you learn that you want to do something else, you should be able to change your mind with no penalty towards graduation. And that's why we give you those first classes right away, because that's where it offers you the opportunities to engage. We don't give you engineering third, fourth, fifth semester, because if that ends up happening, you're a little too far down the road to be able to change your mind. We want you to be able to figure out how you want to change your mind in the beginning. And so that's where you are, Taylor. And I think that's why I pointed that out. Like, tell your story, because your example is so much better than my structural conversation about this. But then that's where we want to go. And I say that to a lot of students. But what everyone should also know is that the majority of people who come through our program never change their major. And that's, but I have a belief that the idea that they could made them more comfortable in their area of study. They knew they weren't stuck. And so that helped with this idea of self-efficacy towards success in that degree program. And I do think that's a core, really unique philosophy of our educational program.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Because it was immediately when I started noticing that I wasn't enjoying what I was doing in my classes. It was never like I'm stuck, I'm trapped, got to be here for the next 4 years.
Yeah.
It was like you said, I started exploring the ITP computer programming minor and trying to find new skills that I did enjoy and see what I could transition to.
It's usually how it starts. It's like, oh, well, maybe I'll do this through a minor. And then you start realizing like, oh, no, wait, I could just do this whole thing. And then you like, it's almost like you tippy-toed into something. And then you're like, no, I could just make this whole step into this. And that's happened with a lot of students.
I have a question unrelated to this, but
Yeah.
why does Nick have a wire headphone in, an AirPod, and then a mic in front of him?
Okay. Let me explain. First off, the mic, what I speak into, there's a wire coming out the back of the mic, which is this right one for my
He's got
wire.
an in-ear monitor.
That's your audio. And then this is connected to my phone for my other audio, just in case, there's any information or ringing things.
Fair
Separate the
enough.
two.
Nick is the most prepared I have ever seen somebody for the first time on a podcast.
This is peak podcasting.
Peak podcasting,
Seriously.
specifically for the first time on the podcast, coming in hard with the hardware.
Well, I am taking a live streaming class through our cinema school this year. And so I'm learning a lot about, industry standards, which is, it's not like podcasting, but live streaming is pretty like, adjacent.
Is the industry standard like the one AirPod and then the wired coming out the other ear?
No, this is my own touch to it. Yeah.
It's engineering.
You
Engineering's
realize
there.
we're having
Efficiency.
this entire description about what Nick looks like right now, and no one's going to see this. This is great podcast material, guys. Great audio content.
I'll put like a screenshot of Nick right now, and that'll be the cover art for the podcast. Be like,
A nice little
Nick
thumbnail.
right there.
There's nothing I'd like more than that.
People have to listen. They'll be like, what does this even mean? Now you know.
But like, even if they can't see Nick's setup, they can definitely feel it because of how crisp his audio is.
You can feel that. You can just feel that with that microphone.
Yeah, I'll get a little
Especially with
bit
the pop. He's got the pop filter, which I don't have.
Pop
He's got that. He's getting rid of
sounds
the
like
plosives.
ASMR.
The plosives are all gone from him. It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Jeez.
Should we do the rest of this conversation in ASMR quality?
I vote no.
So after that one, Paul, I have another question for you regarding admissions related to major, but specifically in applying major.
Yeah.
So I've heard a lot of students of like trying like hack the admissions process,
Hack.
where rather than like applying into like an impacted major, they apply into another one.
Oh yeah, they're gonna sneak in the back door.
Sinking into ISE.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about that, Paul.
Absolutely. I appreciate you. Okay, I'm not gonna do that anymore. It's
right, back to
weirding
normal.
myself out. I'm making myself uncomfortable, which is the first. So yeah, this idea that like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna hack the system. I'm going to find the back door, and I will be very clear with everybody. There are no back doors. It is hard to get in no matter what you do, and there is not any impact. There aren't any impacted majors, which means it's not any more difficult or easier to be admitted to one of our programs over the other. And the most important thing that I can tell everybody is that we are dynamically shifting the role of the incoming class based on the applicant pool every single year. So we're looking to see where demand is going. We don't have set number of seats. Every single year we'll evaluate and like, do we need to grow a program? Do we need to shrink a program? Because also, again, for the long view, these things continuously ebb and flow. A program will grow, a program will shrink, a program will change in size based on interest of whatever the most common media is. I'll give a few examples. In the year 2001 to 2003, you know what the shrinking program was on campus? You know what the smallest program was where we were really worried about enrollment?
Yes.
Computer science. And does anybody know why?
The Y2K? Does that have anything to do with it?
No. Well, kind of. So at the time, it was called the .com bubble. And there were all of these new internet businesses that popped up because the internet was new. I know I'm aging myself to all of you, but my point is that in the media landscape, computers and computer businesses were a complete flop. And so the idea of getting a degree related to computers seemed like a bad idea. Now, what we all know is that the .com bubble was not computer science. It was a bunch of really thinly veiled business majors creating really fake businesses in the online environment. And that's really all it was. And that's why it flopped. It wasn't actual computer science. They weren't large scale software systems that were solutions that we come to know computer science for today. At the same time, in the 90s, aerospace engineering was dying because of what was being referred to as this huge merger of companies where there were a number of different aerospace companies, specifically in Southern California. And then they all kind of died off and got bought up by different companies. And that's why we only have a few larger ones now, but it kind of self-corrected itself. And the same thing goes for space technologies. When we launched the astronautical engineering program, people were wondering why we would do it. And then at that point, the privatization of space became the beginning of everything. And people thought, like, why would you do this? Because NASA is exploding. They're the government's scaling down NASA. We're sunsetting the shuttle program. We're doing everything else. Why would you start a program of astronautical engineering? And then here we are today with the privatization of space and SpaceX and Virgin Orbit and Virgin Galactic and Blue, all of these companies and more that are popping up across the board is leading to more of an industry involved into that. So ebbs and flows related to technology happen all the time, but they tend to happen based on interest of high school students, based on whatever the media is that they're consuming at the time. Biomedical engineering is another example that I won't give in the timeline, but basically people were way too interested in biomedical engineering than they ever needed to be. And so it kind of goes up and down and up and down. And right now we're in this place where everybody thinks that computer science is the end all be all, and that is not true. And there are more oftentimes that people are interested in computer science, or they really think they're interested in computer science. And so they think they want to get into this program, but it really has to do with the fact that a K through 12 education right now has more access to programming coursework than anything else in the engineering arena. And so it's creating some false positives related to interest in computer science, when really some of those people are actually interested in other disciplines, because programming could be somewhat of like the gateway idea to problem solving with technology. So all that's to say, we can adjust things as we go. We can figure things out based on how the applicant pool is increasing, how much we want to grow our applicant pool, because on the other side of this too is we need to make sure that we're creating a viable output for industry. And we're not going to grow a program unless it has viable output for industry, unless the employment is there, unless people are recruiting for it, and we can understand both of those elements. And more specifically, do we have the bandwidth to increase that program at the same time? Now, overall, usually right now, like I said, computer science has increased. We increased the size of the computer science program. We actually added more students this last year, in the last 2 years, than ever before. And that's fine. We can do that. And we can look at the ebb and flow of the applicant pool, the ebb and flow of the industry demand, and make sure that we're doing that across the board. So no impacted programs. Everything is dynamically shifted across the board. But to your point of hacking, that is automatically, by definition, reversing the authentic thing that we talked about in the past, which is a student will come into the application process and think that a certain engineering program is something that's easier to get into, and then all of a sudden start shaping their application around that program. And I will tell you, if a student is truly interested in another program, it's really hard to hide what they want to do, even though they're going to tell me that they want to do mechanical engineering, right? And so I'm just using these as examples, this idea of like, oh, well, I've done all this stuff in computer science and programming, but really right now what I want to do is something else entirely. And then they'll tell me some sort of reason. And I will start to see that that is not necessarily authentic. I will question its legitimacy, and that will give me pause. That will give me some trouble in the applicant review process. So at the end of the day, first off, no impact programs. There is no back door. It's challenging to get admitted no matter what. And two, if anybody tries to strategize their application process around what they believe to be an impacted program, they will actually hurt their chances of admission, because they will have reduced their authenticity to be somewhat illegitimate. And that's not a good idea.
I think there's still I guess that one back door open that I've heard a little bit in high school of, like, applying to communications to go transfer into Viterbi, because
got it.
Yeah. So I guess, is that really the easier way?
Yeah, no, it's not. There are, first of all, so that was the conversation of inside of engineering. And then, and thank you for Jevon for bringing this up, but there are equally competitive applicant pools across the university. There's no back door to the university. More specifically, the farther away you get from engineering, the farther away you are from authenticity, if it's really what you want to do. And so you are really hurting yourself. Second, let's say that you apply to communication, you apply to, I don't know, physics, you apply to applied mathematics, I don't know, whatever it's going to be. And let's say you get admitted, on quite literally the same admit rates, right? So this is not changing anything. So you get admitted, and then the first thing you do is you call me up and say, I've been admitted to the university, I'd like to change my major to engineering. And I say, sorry, can't do it. because in order to be admitted to the engineering school as a current student, you must go through the pre-engineering process that I'm actually not involved in. Our academic advisors will work with you to create a up to year-long course plan where you will take a full year of coursework and prerequisites where you must do extremely well to prepare yourself for another application process a year away, of which there is no guarantee that you will be admitted. And more, our majors are impacted for internal transfer students because we are full. And so if someone were to go down that road thinking it's the right path, they will have added time onto their degree program. They will not have been part of our community from the get-go. And they'll be fighting for their way to get inside, hoping that there will be space in their particular major in their particular year. And each year that is becoming less and less a possibility. And so I want to encourage students to not ever go down that road. I mean, while it is possible to do that, and it was more probable in the past, it is not probable anymore.
Actually, somebody asked a question about that in an admissions event earlier today. So interesting to hear your answer on that. Stacy said pretty much the same thing.
Well, I hope we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
On the topic of authenticity, I know that the Common App writing section can be a challenge for some people, especially when it comes to the topics. Are there any topics that students shouldn't write about or they should just stray away from?
Well, let me ask you this question. You said there was a challenge, and for you all, in brief terms, what was challenging about it? Like, what were the thoughts going through your head that made it challenging?
I think it was mostly choosing which aspect of myself to display, because it's one prompt. So I could talk about my family, I could talk about my interests, I could talk about engineering, trying to curate to that. So I guess what would be the most beneficial to the application, or how should someone try to go about that writing response?
I mean, does everyone else have similar experience?
Yeah.
Is that what made it challenging?
Yeah,
for me,
much.
It's kind of just how do I encapsulate, I guess I'd be playing 18 years of myself in one essay, being a real person.
Okay. That's excellent insight for me. The application is more than one essay. And I think that, and this goes back to Maya, what you and I were talking about, the original, but you really wanted to do an episode about the essay. I'm like, why is everybody so focused on the essay? And I said, we can't do an episode about the essay. We need to do an episode about the entire application process. And I think this is a fantastic core element. The essay is one part of, or one page in a 15-page application. There's all of these different writing elements. And so, Taylor, when you were asking about this, were you asking about the essay or were you asking about all of the writing?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Were you asking about the essay or all of the writing that you need to do?
I was specifically talking about the essay, but
see, you said writing. You said writing. So I was like, okay, how to approach writing? And now I'm realizing what you all mean is essay. Because somewhere along the way in your 17 years or 18 years of existence up to this point, you've heard the term the college essay. And so It has a myth and it has a legend before you even approach it. And there's no way that I can deflate that other than what I'm going to do right now. The application is so many pages. It involves an involvement summary. It involves these quick takes. It involves multiple short answer questions. It involves a longer form essay. It involves a teacher counselor report, which is kind of an external view into your story and who you are. It involves your academic background. It also involves letters of recommendation if you choose to throw that in there. In total, we are talking about 15 total pages here, and the essay is one. So if you think about it objectively, why would anyone care so much about the one essay? Well, I have a feeling it's because you have been pressured into it. Starting sophomore year, you probably drafted college essays in your schools, and you had iteration after iteration, and it went through English papers, and it went through counselors, and it went through strategic conversations about which of these is going to be your core essence of who you are. Well, that is nothing but nonsense. Because how could one prompt, one essay, one writing sample be the core essence of who you are? And more specifically, even if, I mean, I think it's a much better job of, we're trying to get as much information about you as humanly possible through all of these different samples of writing and these backgrounds. That's going to tell us as much about you as we possibly can get. But even then, I know that's not everything, but it's a pretty good background of it all. The essay itself is one thing, but I will tell you that sometimes, maybe a lot of times, the essay is so overwritten and over edited, it's not who you are anymore. And it's incredibly funny to me, as a little tip and trick here, not a tip or trick, it's a real thing, how much authenticity is lost in the essay because it's gone through so much massaging. Because you chose a topic and it's been edited and it's been revised, it's been rewritten. People have college counselors and other types of other people involved in the process, and they reshape it and they rewrite and they do all sorts of stuff. And it comes to me as, I'm sure, beautiful prose that is filled with all sorts of imagery. But is it real anymore? I don't know. And it's fascinating to me that the importance that has been placed on the essay by external forces, because mind you, we never say anything about it, but external forces say the essay is so important that it goes for all those different things, that I find different voices and different writing in the essay than I do the rest of the application. So automatically my red flag of authenticity goes off. Why would you write that way here? And I turn the page on the, because keep in mind, I'm just turning the page on the application, and all of a sudden you're a completely different person who writes in a completely different way. So let's remove that implied sense of urgency and importance related to the essay. Let's thin that out, or let's balance that out across the entire application, knowing that the entire application is telling us who you are. Our job in this process is to understand who you are. Your job in this process is to tell us who you are. And you tell us who you are through these various formats: long form essays, shorter form questions, quick takes, involvement summaries, teacher counselor report. And the one question that says, is there anything else we should know about you? Meaning, like, we assume there's no way that we can get everything. So you tell us if we're missing something. Help us understand something. Every one of our students, including all of you, has had your own journey up to this point, and your own challenges, your own accomplishments. I want to know about them. I want to know what you've done. I want to understand the context of the things that you've done, so I can understand what type of contributions you made to your community. I can figure out who you are in relationship to them. And I can figure out, or I can project forward, what I think your contributions will be to our community, and what I can predict to be the type of person you'll be here, knowing that there isn't one type of person that we're looking for. It's not pole vaulters. It's not, I know, it's not all STEM nerds. It's not robotics captains. It's not student body presidents. It will be a mix of these types of things. And that perfect community, in a weird way, has all of them. And hopefully what you've recognized, and you all can see, and you can tell me whether we're doing this okay, is that when you're in your classes, you're seeing these different types of personalities and these different types of contributors to your teams inside of classes, to your community inside of the overall School of Engineering. And you can see how everyone is slightly different. Everyone can do the work, but everyone's contributing in a different way. So to the core of your question, Taylor, the essay is one part. And remove the importance of that and realize that it is one cog in the wheel as far as us understanding who you are. And make sure that things are well written, which is different than turning it into an A paper in an English class. If I get another essay that starts with onomatopoeia, I think I'm going to hurt myself.
Pow.
Yeah.
Crash. Bang.
And you guys, and Natalie, you've been doing some scholarship interviews for us, so you've seen these, but this idea, like, thwack, there goes my professional hockey career. Like, I mean, how many essays have I read with that where I'm like, okay, it's Natalie's that one. Essay. Yeah, it's that one. And I know what it is, and I know where it's going. Why would I want to read it again? So, but well written is a really interesting word to say, because there's a number of them where I'm like scratching my head going, what the hell is this about? And if I have to spend time to try to understand it, then it's not well written. That I hope I'm kind of rambling here, Taylor. I'm sorry, but I hope that this is addressing your question.
It does. I like how you definitely also touched on how you were saying there's a difference between well written and a paper, because I feel like English classes in high school were very restricting. You couldn't really share your personality in those because it was very formulaic, very by the books type of situation. But it sounds like in this case, you really are looking for that authenticity. And while you want to see well written and have the ideas clearly conveyed, you still want to see personality and still want to see who that person is and whatever story they decide to tell.
Yeah. And I mean, to speak a little bit out of both sides of my mouth also, though, I don't want someone attempting to stand out, though, either. Like, the ideas of like a really bad joke don't go well in the application, right? Like that idea of like, I'm going to stand out. I'm really going to shock them. And I'm like, as I told you earlier, I'm like, you do stand out, but not in a good way.
I had a question, Paul. Not about like the content of the essay or like not of the essay, of the application, but does the timeline at which you submit your application have any effect? Whereas I know there's like deadlines for.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Applications submitted on Wednesday afternoons are always admitted.
But like for me personally, I'm the one where it's like, the due date is the due date.
Yeah. It doesn't matter.
That doesn't have any effect.
Doesn't matter. Fine. Do what you need to do. It freaks me out on the back end, but that's fine. That's my job. I'm supposed to freak out when the day before the application, I don't have enough applications. And on the application date, I do see it. It's fine. It's not a big deal. You don't get any extra points for submitting early, but you don't want to miss the deadline. Deadlines are deadlines. And so my personal recommendation is always shoot for the week prior. Because that's a personal recommendation for my own job, is that like I feel more comfortable when I see applications a week prior. But also because I have had so many panicked emails on midnight of the deadline that something went wrong. And Murphy's Law, something will always go wrong. And so don't put yourself in that situation. Give yourself a couple days. Make sure you have this stuff written, backed up somewhere. Make sure this idea of like you putting it into the application is something that you're not doing at the last minute, trying to get to that last moment. Last year, oh my God, most frustrating thing in the world. I was getting Twitter messages on the wrong.
More Twitter.
I thought you wanted the Twitter engagement.
I didn't say I said I wanted Twitter followers. I didn't want Twitter messages on midnight of the deadline. More specifically, I don't know you. You just randomly, like, first of all, it's gonna like the Twitter block, like I don't know you, I don't follow you. It didn't get through to me till a couple of days later, but I had this whole thing come through where it's like these people were trying to reach you. They were on the wrong deadline. They were looking at the wrong school. They were emailing me like, and I said midnight of the deadline. It wasn't our deadline. It was another deadline. And all of a sudden I'm looking at this going, what is happening? Who are you? What are you doing? Like, you're showing me your cards by that you don't pay attention. You're also showing me your card. You think you're panicking because you're on the deadline. Just give yourself a little bit of time and make sure that you are putting things in, a little bit ahead of schedule. Don't wait till that last minute like Nick does. I get that. I understand that.
I didn't do it for applications.
Okay.
As a general protocol of other essays.
Yeah, because honestly, it's just so much of the technology is there are a lot of deadlines. Specifically November 1st this year, there are a lot of university Common App deadlines, which means the Common App server, which is something we don't control, gets a lot of hits on the same day for a lot of universities. So just keep that in mind. You might want to give yourself a couple days safety.
Nice. Well, Paul, I think that summed it up pretty well. I guess wrapping up to the end, I would be curious, one sentence, what would be your advice to prospective students who are applying right now?
One sentence is really hard to do for me.
Do pole vaulting. I'm just like throwing myself under the bus at this point. Sorry.
If you could ever do anything in life, make sure you're a pole vaulter. My one bit of advice is take a deep breath and zoom out. And this process has so much built into it by external factors. Let's recognize those external factors and dive into the sheer facts of it. I hope that this episode outlines a lot of the things that create fear and anxiety in our applicant pool. But I also realize it doesn't minimize the work ahead for anybody applying. There is a lot of work here. Our application is long. It is a struggle. Even if I take away some of these fears, it still is writing. To Taylor's point, you're still deciding what you write about, and you are crafting your narrative to us. But I want to make sure that I'm making it as easy as possible on you, which is that I'm not seeking a certain type of narrative. You don't need to manufacture one or mold your narrative into someone else's. I do want to hear yours. And so authenticity is key. Trust your gut, be authentic, make sure it's well written. And if you ever need anything, you have any questions, let us know. But I will let you know that the one question I always get is, can you tell me whether this essay is good? And I cannot pre-review an application and tell you whether it's good or not. That is a little unethical in our process. But recognize if it's your story, if it is well written, and if it is authentic, that's good. And we're going to do our best to understand it.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Okay. Fun bonus round. Thank you to all the students that are here. We're going to do a quick take in the order that we did the intro.
Ooh.
So I'll ask a quick question like we had at the end of the application, the one that we all talked about.
The quick takes?
And everybody rapid fire answers.
Love it.
Okay.
Wait, am I participating or am I just listening?
Yeah, participate.
Okay.
I'll
go last.
You'll go after Taylor. Okay, perfect. First one. So it's a really hard one. Favorite snack?
Talkies.
Jevon.
Oh, am I going for this as well? Okay, applesauce.
What? Ooh.
Chocolate covered acai blueberries.
Whoa, he's got it on screen right there.
We'll choose fruit snacks.
Think protein bars.
Mine are dark chocolate peanut butter cups. Okay, favorite movie? Natalie, go.
Twilight.
Oh, Get Out.
A Beautiful Mind.
Cars.
This is always really hard for me.
Now you know how we feel.
Oh, you were the one saying
that.
I know.
Hypocrite.
It's not a hypocrite. It's really what I'm going to confuse people with. I'd say it's a movie called Beautiful Girls. None of you have ever seen it. You've never heard about it. And it's actually really hard to find, but it's a movie called Beautiful Girls.
Okay. Mine is The Age of Adeline. And if you were to pick up one sport, just starting that today, you think it's cool, what sport would you do?
Whoa. Badminton.
Ultimate Frisbee.
Javelin.
Pole vaulting.
Synchronized swimming. Nice. And finally, what is your favorite breakfast food? I'm thinking about food tonight.
I don't like breakfast.
Natalie, that is not an answer.
You're weird. Natalie, the end of this whole episode is Natalie is weird. That's what it comes down to.
If you don't learn anything else today.
I like bacon. I'll take that.
There it is. There it is.
That counts.
I'll cheat and just say applesauce again. That's the favorite snack.
For breakfast.
Yeah, seriously, for breakfast?
Any meal of the day.
You two both disappoint me.
Wow.
All right, at least I gave an answer.
Jevon, what did you have for breakfast today?
You will never believe it.
Applesauce.
Yes, I did.
Are you kidding me?
Yeah, my whole, you know what, actually, so the thing, the bad part about going to SC is that for whatever reason, they don't have like the Mott's Granny Smith applesauce that I have back in Jersey. So just by the grace of her heart, my mother sends me a box of applesauce, and now it's filling up my fridge. I have like 6 or so cartons of Mott's applesauce ready to go.
Get it at the store. It's at the store where I live.
Ralph's doesn't have it. Target doesn't have it.
Mott's applesauce.
Ralph
the Granny Smith, not the regular.
Oh, Mott's Granny Smith.
Yeah, the Granny
applesauce.
Smith. Yeah.
So specific.
Wow.
I kid you not. My quick take on the application is Mott's unsweetened Granny Smith applesauce.
Have you tried the green apple one?
Is that just Granny Smith? Like, isn't that the green apple?
Isn't that Granny Smith?
No, wait. Is Granny Smith green apple?
Yeah,
I think it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the green apple one.
Never mind. Okay, I agree. That one is really good.
Jevon, do you still like baguettes?
Yeah, that's probably a close second.
They're good.
Wow.
Random.
It's like you're eating prison food, man. Like it's like you're eating bread and applesauce. Like that's your entire diet.
For the morning.
Okay, moving on from Jevon. Nick.
I'll go with a breakfast burrito.
Nice.
Wait, what's in the breakfast burrito?
You know, I think like a classic, you know, potatoes, eggs, cheese, chorizo, pico.
Mm.
I like an everything bagel with an avocado spread, scrambled eggs with peppers inside, and some soda fruit on the side.
My girl, my favorite was oh no, Paul, go first. Sorry, I got so excited.
I have like I love great eggs Benedicts. Like that's, but I can't eat that all the time. So that's a really special thing. But like almost every day for breakfast, I'm a really boring old man. I have Cheerios with bananas and blueberries because I'm an old man and that's what I eat.
Mm. Yeah, you know, Jevon's answer would make me thinking that Jevon is like a really old man. Then.
No, he's more like a toddler. I was gonna say, like, should we get him the little pouches of the applesauces?
It not the pouch, like the actual, just the cups.
It's more hardcore that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and also if you forget
cups, not the big jar, but the cups.
Yeah,
Yeah.
What I was going to say was that like if you ever forget a spoon, you can just fold the lid into a spoon. But then I realized like the pouch, you don't need a spoon anyway, so there wasn't much of an advantage.
I think you're going to create your own podcast on applesauces.
Well, I could.
Applesauce reviews.
I look forward to it.
All right. Yeah. Well, this quickly turned into hot takes instead of quick takes, but well, very cool. And thank you again, everybody, for joining, having this conversation. I really enjoyed myself, Paul. Thank you for all the advice. I'm positive it will be helpful. So.
I hope so. Thank you, everybody. Great insight. Great stuff. And if anybody's out there that needs more stuff, always feel free to contact us.
All right. Welcome back, everyone. That was very entertaining. I guess personally, I just chose some of my favorite people, some of my like best friends on that panel. So yeah, Natalie, I had no idea she did pole vaulting. Pretty cool.
This is now the topic of conversation that's come up multiple times. That we had the whole pole vaulting conversation. It was yesterday, I think, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this podcast is especially interesting as an admissions mythbusters because not only do students hear a lot of information from you about like best practices, how to navigate this and answering some of the questions they might have, but also you get a sense of what it's kind of like to be in Viterbi. Like these sort of students, these are your classmates. So yeah, it's cool to hear like little fun things about them and their personality. I think that really came out in this podcast.
That is my favorite part about this episode that we did, because I think a lot of people, if you're still listening, you went into this thinking, okay, cool, this is how I'm going to figure out how to get admitted. And you walked away with, I think, a whole different perspective. One, on how admission works, but two, what this place is like. And I hope that was helpful to you, because it's not necessarily the intent, but it becomes a really nice byproduct of how we go about things. And I think that as I always talk about, hearing from our students and getting to meet them and understand their stories is really some of the best things that we can do. And why I love this podcast is that it puts more people out there for you to engage with and find out whether you're like them. Even if you don't agree with some of the snacks that were mentioned.
My gosh, yeah, Jevon's like hyper specific. Only this one type of applesauce and this one mode of.
I'm not gonna lie, like this podcast has, because we recorded this a couple of days ago. For the last couple of days, this particular conversation has been in my brain, like taking up space. I was at the grocery store last night and I spent about 5 minutes on the applesauce aisle specifically because of Jevon, trying to figure out what was he talking about. And I'm pretty sure it's because he was dealing with that Granny Smith version, the green apple version. I'm committed to finding it, but it is true they don't carry it at Trader Joe's here on the West Coast. And I do remember, this is going way too deep, but I did have this epiphany last night, is that when I used to work at Trader Joe's, I used to work at Trader Joe's when I was like about 24, 25 years ago. It was a small fun fact. And I do remember we used to stock 2 types of applesauces and no one would ever buy the green one. I could be wrong. I could be making this up and like, again, another myths and legends things. But so if there's any actual Trader Joe's lifers out there and they want to jump in and let me know the history of this. Is there a green apple Granny Smith version offered on the East Coast and only on the East Coast? Did it used to be offered on the West Coast? Am I way off on this?
We'll have to touch base with Jevon as well. I don't know if it's the Granny Smith green apple specifically from Mott's. I don't know if he's specific on the brand or not. Like
I think it's
there
just,
were so many specific things.
I think it's just the type of apple to make the applesauce because that has a different bite to it. Granted, this will be the ongoing mystery. Maya and myself are devoted to solving this mystery and getting the answer to everyone as much as possible. So if you have information leading to the conclusion of solving the myths and legends regarding Granny Smith Mott's applesauce and availability on West Coast versus East Coast, please let us know. Call us and email us. Let us know what's happening, and we can get you on the podcast to talk about it.
Yeah, maybe in an intro or outro we eat this applesauce.
Ooh,
give a live review here if we find it.
The applesauce taste test.
Yep.
Oh, that would be nuts. That would be down. That'd be really good.
Or maybe you guys could do a video. That's Jevon's team.
That is
video
Jevon.
Applesauce taste.
But it's a podcast conversation. It would be a little weird to go into that media world. It's a different user base.
We could do a video podcast.
Yeah, we'll do it. We'll do the podcast. We'll record it and then we'll put it on YouTube just to kind of get the mass. All 10 more viewers on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No, I'm in on that. Remind me, what was your snack?
What was my snack? Dark chocolate peanut butter cups.
That's what it was.
Yeah.
I'm curious how many people, because of this episode, are actually going to put Granny Smith Mott's applesauce as their favorites.
Oh my gosh, that would be amazing if you like read someone's application. You'll have to report back.
I'm gonna look for it now. It's gonna be funny. It's gonna be funny. It's like a little wink, like, hey, I listen to the podcast.
Oh my gosh.
It's the code word on the application.
Seriously.
And now we've created another myth and legend related to admission. Like, you gotta put Granny Smith Mott's applesauce.
Yeah, no promises it'll get you admitted, but it will get you a good laugh from Paul.
We'll get a good chuckle for sure. But that's what's part about is that's only if I actually read it, because no one else is aware of this episode or this conversation.
Yeah, seriously. We'll have to inform the rest of them. Anyways.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get out of here. Thank you all. We'll see you next week with a whole other episode of Viterbi Voices.